So welcome to it's really, the emotionally intelligent woman, or 5 ways to become more intelligent as a woman. So it's really great to have you with me here this evening, and hope that you get a lot out of tonight. It's quite an interesting topic because it's one of the topics I find that wherever I go, there's a lot of issues around women wanting to become more emotionally intelligent or learn ways to become more emotionally intelligent. And an example was yesterday I was running an Empowering Women's program. And what I found was for many of them there's 2 issues that mainly they feel they face. One is a lack of confidence, and the other one is sometimes getting their emotions to work for them and not against them. So, which is obviously the issue around emotional intelligence. And it was really interesting to talk about emotional intelligence with them because they didn't really understand what emotional intelligence is. So hopefully we can talk a little bit about that tonight and just give you some sort of understanding as to what emotional intelligence is. Okay, so would you like to be in a position where you learn how to manage your emotions so well that they work for you and not against you? Would you like to walk away from disagreements thinking, wow, I really handled that well? Would you like to be able to keep your emotions in check when you feel angry or upset? And would you be able to manage any situation at home or at work calmly? And I appreciate that this might seem, that sounds like nirvana, and who can do that? But the interesting thing about emotional intelligence is that it's not something with which we are born. We learn how to be emotionally intelligent. It's actually a skill. It's not a genetic predisposition. And I always add that in because I think a lot of women, I've got a very good friend of mine who, for example, is very hot to get angry. She's quick to get angry. She says she's hot to anger. And what's interesting around that is that she says, I was born that way, Karen, and I'm always that way. It's not that way, actually. You can learn to manage your emotions well, even though you are angry or upset or distressed or frustrated. It doesn't mean that you have to allow those emotions to get the better of you. So that's really in part what this webinar is about. It's looking at what emotions are and what they do for you and how we can potentially be in a position where we can manage them well, because some of us don't manage them as well as we could. And would you like to be able to stand up for yourself calmly when others bully you and try to control you? That's often where I see women get angry or upset, where they feel as if they're cornered, and then they just get really angry and often come out fighting. The problem really is that many women either tend to be passive in conflict or become aggressive. And so what happens with that then is, for example, if you're in an argument with somebody at work, what I find with many women is that they either just walk away and really angry and fuming, and quite often get frustrated with themselves. I should have said that, Karen, and I should have done that. But don't do that, whatever it was that they think they should do. And I think those women who tend to be passive walk away feeling as if they've lost the battle, if you like. Where other women quite often I see get very aggressive. So they'll, go in for the fight and put their viewpoint across and walk away thinking that they've won. And I think that's an important thing when we talk about emotions and managing emotions. If you walk away from a conflict, for example, and you've been really angry and you've been really frustrated and you've shown your aggression, and you walk away with seemingly what the upper hand feels like at the end of the argument, rest assured you haven't won. Because what I always say is that if you're going to have a disagreement, which we all do in life, keep calm, because if you do, and you're able to communicate in a calm and assertive way and manage your emotions well, you generally then walk away having won. But if you walk away having shouted and got frustrated and think that you won because the other person walked away or got, sort of quiet, you haven't won, actually, and in fact, in most ways, you've lost. But we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about women in conflict. And as I said here, either way, we lose. So maybe it's time to see how you deal with your emotions. How do I handle my emotions? Do I show them too easily to others? Am I an open book? How can I use my emotions better to help me feel in control of situations I'm in? And I think that's a really key thing. A lot of us don't really take the important role that emotions play in our daily lives really as seriously as I think we should. We're 2 different human beings in terms of we think things, which is about being rational and logical and decision-making, But equally as powerful in our lives, and I think particularly as women, is our ability to feel emotions, sensations, the things that really often, by the way, drive and move us. And if you think about the greatest things in life that have been achieved, most of them have been achieved through emotions. So, winning, the 400-meter at the Olympic Games, of course it's logic around diet and exercise and the wanting to win. But it's really about the passion of the race and the passion to support my country or to win for my country. And, some of the greatest things women have done have been through passion and wanting to be vocally expressive. I think a great example would be Oprah Winfrey. Now, I never used to watch too many of her shows, but she's a very passionate woman and very much driven by her emotions, and she will admit to that. So what I always say when I'm teaching emotional intelligence is that, some of the greatest things in life have been achieved through emotions. And I think it's really important then, A, to understand what they are, but also importantly to make them work for us and not work against us. And at the end of the session, I'll give you the opportunity to have a chat with me about your emotions and how you feel about them. So there's quite a lot of you on the line. I won't stay here too long. Most of you know me, or some of you know me. I coach women. I do lots of different things. I do international leadership development. I coach. I'm a psychologist by training. I work in Africa, in Fiji, which is really lovely, and in Australia, which I love. I have worked with families and marriages and individuals for over 20 years. I write, I speak at conferences. I do lots of coaching in my life. I really enjoy coaching, and I really enjoy coaching women. And the reason why is because I think that one of my key drives in life is to see women succeed. And if I think about, the latest issue, tragedy in Christchurch, and if I see the way that Jacinda Ardern has actually dealt with the situation, she's exemplary. And I would love to try and coach more women into roles like that, to be good at that role. So this is just a little bit about me, but generally I love helping women lead the lives they were born to lead, free from fear and limiting beliefs that they will never get to where they want to go. These are some of the people who I work with, and I'm so grateful I'm able to work across nations. This is a little bit about our Empowering Women to Thrive program. I won't stay here too long, but essentially what it is, I was propelled, or I suppose my purpose, my emotional purpose, my passion was to help women, as I said, and it really comes from my work with essentially initially working in domestic violence. I've got a long background in working in domestic violence. But I'm about helping women and at all levels and ages thrive. And so the program really is about, we run Be Unstoppable, an online program. We run a program called Empowering Women to Thrive at Work, which is a 12-stage face-to-face. We do women's retreats. Wouldn't that be lovely to take you on a retreat with me? We do coaching. We do webinars. So that's a little bit about what we do. So we would love you to get involved, and I know some of you actually are regular names I see, so welcome to this particular webinar this evening. I'll tell you a little bit more about Unstoppable, but we launched in June last year. It's really for women around the world. It's a long story, and I won't get into the detail, but I've realized over a long period of time that many women, even, for example, women not living in cities, struggle with being able to have access to help. So the program is written for women around the world by a woman who understands women, if that makes any sense. Okay, so emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is the ability to manage your emotions and the emotions of others in order to facilitate social functioning. So just bear with that very academic definition, ladies, and just stay with me here. Essentially what emotional intelligence for women is, or women are, is the ability for us to manage our emotions so that we can do well in our relationships with others. That's the best way to describe it. So if we're able to manage how we react or respond to something, then we are able to essentially, on some level, be able to control how somebody else will react or respond. So let me just explain what I mean. Let's just pretend that your boss is shouting at you and is really frustrated with you for something that you haven't done. And you feel really overwhelmed and really angry about that. And so you get really kind of indignant and you shout back at him. In the moment that you choose to shout back at him, you lose control of the situation. Why do I say that? Because he's already angry. And if you then engage his anger with your anger, you're just going to get a no-win situation. In other words, the relationship between the two of you then starts to struggle. If you are in a relationship, let's say, with your husband or your child, and let's say they're angry at you similarly, if you get angry back at them, the same thing happens. So you get angry and notice the emotion you have is anger and frustration, so you just kind of spit it out. And you defend yourself or you get aggressive. And really what you're doing is you are reacting to something. And of course you've got every reason to be upset about what's going on. But what I'm trying to say is that the woman who's able to remain calm, even though she has those emotions, is the woman who will walk away from that particular situation having won. So let's come back to your boss. If your boss is shouting at you because he's angry, you might feel anger, because that's an emotion. You might feel frustration, which is part of anger and emotion. But if you're able to say, calm down to yourself, obviously in your head, and say something to your boss like, I will not be spoken to by you like this. I would appreciate if you speak to me respectfully. Notice calm, notice standing your ground and making your viewpoint heard. If your manager or boss continues to shout, you'll just say something like, even though you're getting angrier, I don't appreciate this. I've asked you not to speak to me like this, so we will discuss it another time, and you walk away. So what you've done then is that you've still maintained that level of dignity. You've still maintained that level of control, but calmly. And your boss is sort of thinking to himself, what on earth happened there? She's not getting angry. And because you're not getting angry, he's got nowhere to go. So what I always try and teach when I am talking about emotional intelligence or I'm training women is this. If you can, in the heat of the battle, as I say, keep your emotions under control, there's a 95% chance that you will walk away from that particular exchange having won. That is ultimately the ability to manage your emotions well so that you are able to facilitate social functioning, or in other words, to have good interpersonal relationships. Can you learn emotional intelligence? Absolutely. We are not born emotionally intelligent. It is a skill like driving a car or learning how to cook. These are skills that we learn. Now, when we are children, obviously, we take a lot of our role modeling from our parents, so we might watch our mother and father's interaction or how our mother deals with her mother. So there's lots of things that we pick up in the journey of life, but essentially emotional intelligence is a learned skill. And the great thing about that is that if you have learned not to be emotionally intelligent, it means you can unlearn that and therefore relearn how to be emotionally intelligent. It's not something that you will never change. It's not like your personality with which we are born. Although your personality does grow and develop over the course of your life, ultimately what it does mean is that if you're born an introvert, you will die an introvert. With emotional intelligence, you can learn emotional intelligence and you can change some of the behaviors that you may have that are not working for you. So what in the working and the training of women over so many years, I see common issues or threads. And one of them is that using emotions is one where I think we as women can do better, much better. I'm not going to get involved in the discussion here around domestic violence, but I will make the comment that, for women across their lives, so whether it's work or whether it's at home, it's in relationships, it's in the community, I think that when I think about women overall, I think we can learn to express our emotions more effectively. We are also, I think, more able to feel our emotions more effectively. I think some of us are very good at suppressing how we feel, which isn't a healthy thing either. But I think it's also able to, when our emotions there to tell us something. Yes, of course, they are there to fall in love and to find a partner and procreate and all those wonderful things. But emotions, very interestingly, are one of the things there to keep us alive. So fear, for example, is a very motivating emotion. If you're fearful of something, fear is an emotion, often you will do something, the fight or the flight to keep yourself safe. And most people don't stop to think about, actually, that was the emotions that I have that kept me alive. So I think that in many ways we can learn to understand our emotions better. We can learn to, feel them more meaningfully, but also to manage them when we feel as if they are becoming out of control. So the benefits of emotional intelligence are so many. There are so many research articles and studies about emotional intelligence, but essentially what it does for us, we make better decisions. I always say never make a decision, particularly a big decision like ending a marriage or selling a house because you're angry with your partner. Any of those big decisions, never make decisions that are huge when your emotions are high. Because I'll tell you what I believe, honestly, and I have witnessed for so long, is that if you do, you generally will make the wrong decision. The benefits of emotional intelligence is to have better relations. Better relationships with people at work, better relationships with people at home. There's nothing worse than feeling upset all the time, feeling angry a lot of the time, feeling we've got this ongoing sense of resentment, and all of those words I've used, anger, frustration, resentment, they're all emotions, ladies, all emotions. And so I often try and talk to women who are struggling with emotional issues to think about a cleansing. What is it that you would need to do to get rid of emotions that are not helping you? Because as long as you carry around distress and anger and hurt and pain, I believe that at the end of the day, the only person that's being affected by that is us, even though it could be other people who we are upset with or angry with, etc. But we're the ones that are actually hurt. The emotions that we have are really not helping us. And ultimately, then, I think that if we do have great emotional intelligence, we have improved health. So these are really important things, I think, and, they're benefits, but they're far more than just these. I mean, I could keep going. More effective relationships, better career prospects. For those of you who are on the line who enjoy reading, please have a look at the work of Goleman, who wrote a book called Emotional Intelligence, and then he wrote a book called Emotional Intelligence at Work. And then his latest work, I think that I read a while ago, was called Social Intelligence. And what he talks about very interestingly, so he spent about 20 years studying emotional intelligence, and I love his work. He talks about, his studies say that, let's just say that there's two of you on the line now, and you both go for the same job, right? And so you're both going for, let's say, sales managers. And the organization only wanted one, but decided, you were both good, so they would employ both of you. So both of you go into the organization as sales managers, and you start working on your career, and you're both enjoying it. What's interesting in Goleman's research is that he says that it's the female, or obviously the person, but I'm talking to women here, but it will be the one of you on the line who is able to manage their emotions well at work, doesn't get angry or frustrated with their staff or their colleagues or people who work, above them even. It'll be that woman who's able to have a really great relationship. So is optimistic, is positive. Even if they're angry, they're calm. They're able to manage situations and difficult people. That female who's able to manage their emotions well and therefore have great interpersonal relationships around them is the female in his research who is going to climb to the top of the organization and reach the top faster than the other female would. So it's absolutely critical in career prospects to be emotionally intelligent. And he ends off by saying, intellectual intelligence might get you into the job, but it's emotional intelligence that's going to get you up the line and the ladder to the top of the crop. And I think that's very interesting research. And obviously, if you're feeling happy and you're not stressed and you've got your emotions under control, you just tend to feel more relaxed. You feel happier. And when we're more relaxed and we're happier, we tend to have better health. We tend to be able to think things through. Our minds aren't fuddled and muddled and stressed and emotional and angry and worrying about things. And so if we've got a clear mind, we tend to see solutions to the problems that we find in our lives a lot more easily. And therefore, we make more effective decisions. And ultimately, I think the key thing is that it gives us the ability to enjoy life more. And I think you would all agree that when you're, angry about something or you're turning over things in your mind and you feel frustrated, it's really hard to enjoy life or to feel settled or to feel at peace. And if we don't feel at peace, it's really exhausting. We have a greater sense of confidence and achievement when we are at peace. And ultimately greater resilience, when things get tough. So problem number one might be somebody, for example, one of you who is unsure how to resolve issues. Let's say EI, emotional intelligence in relationships. And I see this more often than not, women who are passive. Or sometimes, but not as much as women who are passive, or women who are aggressive. Or, and this is probably a really interesting one, women who are passive-aggressive. Passive-aggressive behavior really is the behavior that is gentle, if you like, but with an aggressive undertone. And I think one of the things I find with passive-aggressive behavior is that you never really know what you're getting. It's kind of the person, I always call them the smiling assassins. They're wonderful to your face, but behind your back, oi, 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 not so good. Passive are people or women who generally tend to shrink in the face of conflict. In other words, they walk away, they become submissive. Obviously, aggressives are people who just go in there for the battle. But things don't get better if we don't resolve issues in our lives. I did a webinar this morning on managing low performers. And it's like leadership, where leaders say, John will get better at his job, or Samantha will get better in time, or Samantha's just young, so she's causing, problems in the team, and as she matures, things will settle down. Well, the problem is that things don't get better. We feel trapped in the same cycle of anger, non-resolution, frustration, and that can be at work and at home. So one of the things I would like to see more women do is to learn how to resolve issues in their lives and resolve conflict much more effectively and assertively, and using emotional intelligence to do that, to understand that they might be upset about something, but then be motivated to resolve things at work and at home in the most appropriate way. Because if you don't, and you've got all of these things happening over time, to passive or passive-aggressive, what happens is, you often feel afraid to raise issues. I was sitting in a board meeting last week with a CEO, a female that I'm coaching, and it was really interesting. There were probably about 15 people in the room, and I was just observing. I wasn't actually participating, and she's the CEO, so she's basically conducting the meeting. And as she was having her say, one of the gentlemen in the room looked at his watch and said to her, let's just call her Karen because it's an easy name to use, Karen, it's time you shush now because we're running out of time. And I was absolutely gobsmacked at that. And I said nothing, obviously, because I wasn't there to say anything. I was there to observe. But what was interesting is that she's always said to me, I'm too afraid to raise issues in this meeting because I feel as if people talk over me. And I just looked at her and I thought to myself, don't do this. Do not let this happen. So she looked at me and she saw me looking at her, and I sort of gave her these kind of little slanty eye look. And then she sort of swung into action and she said to him, I don't appreciate the way that you're talking to me. I will finish what I have to say and then the meeting will end. And I was so ecstatic she did that, because she's not somebody who feels brave, and often resentment can arise in these situations. How many of you, ladies on the line, walk away from a particular conflict or situation at work where you feel really angry with yourself that you didn't deal with something as well as you could have, and you feel really frustrated at the situation and at the other person, but mostly you feel frustrated at yourself. You feel really resentful, more so at them, but frustrated with yourself. And sometimes you're too scared to say how you feel. Nothing seems to change for you. And I think we get stuck in the cycle of, being too afraid, which is an emotion, being too unsure, which is a sense of a lack of confidence. And they're all driven by emotional intelligence or fear or lack of courage, or, and essentially, ultimately, we break down, our confidence breaks down, our relationships break down. And so I think, coming back again to what I was saying earlier, I think emotions have a lot to play in our lives. Problem number 2 is because you're so emotionally overwhelmed with something. Some of us sulk, some of us just don't speak, and then others of us just disengage. I was working with a couple the other day. It was really interesting. They'd been married for 16 years, and when they have an argument, a blue, the reason why they came to see me is because he says she punishes him. And I asked her what that means, and she said, no, I don't. And he said, well, for example, the last time we had an argument, she didn't speak to me for 7 weeks. 7 weeks. And I asked her, what was that for? And she said, well, he just annoyed me. And I said, well, he might have annoyed you, but sulking is not going to help the situation. And no speaks is not going to help the situation. So essentially, those are emotional reactions to something. They are all punishing. In other words, I'm not going to talk to you because you've annoyed me. I'm going to sulk because you've annoyed me. And it's really, essentially, it's anger. And anger is an emotion. And when you sulk or you don't speak or you disengage, it's emotionally unintelligent. So at times at work or at home you feel angry or frustrated. Sometimes you might feel unable to resolve the issue or don't know how. Often you fall back on old behaviors that we learned a long time ago. So for example, you might say, well, I'm trying to be more, emotionally intelligent, but you feel, well, I've tried it a couple of times, it doesn't work, so you go back to just being passive. And I think that's an important point here, ladies, is that to learn the skill of emotional intelligence is just that. It's a skill, like riding a bicycle. The first or second time you get on the bicycle, you'll fall off or, drive into the tree. But if you keep going with the bicycle, eventually you're going to master the bicycle. So emotional intelligence is the same, using your emotions well, being confident, being assertive. The more you do it, the better at it you are. So I'm not suggesting that when you get off this webinar tonight that you're going to be great at emotional intelligence. I'm just explaining to you how it works and hoping potentially to be able to help you if I can, so that you can change situations that you're not happy with in your lives, whether that's at home or at work. And often then the silence continues, as I said, 7 weeks, can you believe? Maybe it does get better, but the pattern generally keeps going. So, okay, they've over the 7 weeks and things go well for a couple of months or even, a year or whatever, and then the same thing happens. The no speaking, the sulking, the disengaging. It's not healthy emotional behavior over time, and I'm sure all of you appreciate that it actually hurts your relationships. And the same thing at work. And then you don't feel happy. You feel upset. You're not sure how to deal with the issue. Maybe, as I said, you're ongoing resenting. You feel disillusioned. And if it's at work, for example, and your boss doesn't try and resolve the problem with you because maybe he doesn't have the skills or your team member doesn't have the skills, so you think, oh, what the heck, I don't want to stay here anymore. Even though it's a good job, it's well paid and it's close to home, you're thinking of leaving. And the real reason, if it's as simple as this, obviously, is that you're leaving because the emotional component of what goes on with you isn't under control. And generally you become a very unhappy you. And I think the other point is that if we don't learn to manage our emotions well, you could say, well, I'm in a situation at work where I don't like Bob, so we have this ongoing issue, emotional issue, frustration, I'm leading. But just remember, ladies, remember this, that there's a really good chance that you might carry some of your baggage into the next job. And then ultimately what that means is that you've got the same problem all over again. I remember the day I started loving working with women. I was working with a 24-year-old woman called Jessie. She lacked so much confidence. She'd get angry at something and say nothing. Like she would just boil it up and up and up, and it was like a pressure cooker. And she did nothing. But she would get really resentful with the people, and she'd always go looking for a new job. And she was, even though she was a young woman, she had so much potential. I'll never forget her. But the problem really was her. She couldn't control what other people did, but she could certainly control what she did. And so we talked a lot about what she could do to manage her emotions better and how she could play, arguments better. And she just really, over time, probably worked with her for about a year. She really managed it very, very well. So what is the emotionally intelligent woman? And, what is this? How does she manage her emotions and situations? First and foremost, I think it's important to say she's in touch with how she feels about things. I asked a young woman yesterday, how do you feel about what's going on at your job? So she's not happy at work and there's a couple of issues. And she says to me, I have no idea. I said, what do you mean you have no idea? She says, I don't know how I feel. And I said, well, this has been going on for about 6 months. Have you not thought about it? And she said, well, yes, I've thought about it, but I don't know how I feel about it. So she's not in touch with with her emotions. And I suggest that she probably subdues them really well. She doesn't feel them. An emotionally intelligent woman is able to work out what her emotions are telling her. So if she said to me, I'm really upset and I'm really angry, obviously the emotions then would be telling her that somebody's offended her pride, somebody's offended her sense of social justice, somebody's offended her sense of equality, whatever her emotions are telling us. Because emotions tell us things. They're there for a reason. And I think that's the thing, is that we don't get in touch with them enough or don't understand what they're telling us. An emotionally intelligent woman can hold her own calmly in a situation, even when she's furious or distressed, as I explained about 10 minutes ago. She manages to let her head rule her heart. I think this is a really, really important point, which I did raise earlier. It's fine to be upset. It's fine to be angry. It's fine to be hurt. Well, it's not fine. It's horrible, but you get what I mean. But if we are able to then try and resolve those issues with logic and put our point across calmly and intelligently, we generally walk away having won. It's when we don't, as I explained earlier, and we get angry and we lash out that we lose. But an emotionally intelligent woman doesn't do that. She's able to manage her emotions well. Her logic manages any emotional outburst that she may have. And then she goes back and calmly resolves the issues. So if you have a look at these, is this you, ladies? Are you able to do all of these things? Or do you find that some of these things are what you do? And do you find because you do these things that they upset you, or they affect the way that you are at work, or they affect some of the relationships that you have in your personal lives? Please feel free to add a comment in the question box now if you'd like to. Happy to take your comments or any questions. So there you go. She's in touch with how she feels. She works out her emotions and what they're telling her. She's able to be calm in a situation where she feels angry. She's able to be logical and rational in trying to resolve issues as they arise. So the solutions to problem number one, she was unsure how to resolve issues. So learn what impact your emotions have on you. I think it's really important that you do, if you can. And I gave you the work of Daniel Goleman, The Emotional Intelligence. There's also another book that you might like to read, which I just loved. It's by a gentleman called, if you've got a pen and paper, Martin Seligman, Seligman. Martin Seligman wrote a book called Flourish. And he talks about how we're able to actually flourish in our lives. And he talks about emotions as well. And I really like his work. And he also wrote a book which is slightly off track to this topic right now called, that's right, Learned Optimism. It's a fabulous book about how we can learn to be optimistic and how we can learn to have great relationships. I love his work, Martin Seligman. He's the head of positive psychology. So he's the guru of positive psychology around the world, and his work is wonderful. And thank you so much for your lovely comment, Kim. Kim is saying, thank you. This is very informative and helpful. So nice to have your comment, Kim. I really appreciate it. Do a program on emotional intelligence. This is probably one of my key love topics. I really love emotional intelligence because I think that, as women, we could thrive on it. But do a program, see what there is available. We do run one. It's a 1-day program or a 2-day program. We generally don't run them on our own. For example, we don't sort of hire a hall and run them. We tend to go into organizations and run them for people in organizations. But it's not the only way we do it. You can learn the key skills by, a program, as I say, coaching, reading, researching, implement strategies to get it right if you can, and that goes often through coaching, somebody to coach you through. If you're a really emotional sort of person, go to a coach who's able to help you. If you find, for example, that some of your relationships aren't working, then go to somebody to teach you how to do this well, to teach and to guide you. And I always say when I'm working with women who are at work or who are in leadership positions or who even are in politics, heaven forbid, or who are in personal relationships, here's the thing I want you to write down if you've got a pen and paper, ladies. For things to change, firstly, I must change. If you want to have a great career and you want to really make it to the top and you're not because you get emotional or you get frustrated or even you're too fearful to talk in meetings, you have to learn how to do it better. And if you say, well, as I grow older, things will get better, they won't. And if you want to really do it well, then make these things a goal for you. Because I think if you're able to do this, you will be way ahead in the rest of your life, really, in all kinds of relationships. Solution to problem 2, where you sulk, you don't speak, you get angry. Read and learn about emotional intelligence. So if you are somebody who likes to sulk, read about what that is. If you're somebody who, likes the don't speaks, by the way, as I said, don't speaks is all about, essentially it's about punishing. Have you ever been in a situation where you're in a team, right? And one of your team member walks in and they're obviously pissed about something, but you don't know what they're pissed about because they haven't told you and they haven't told anybody around you, but they walk in with that miserable, walking dead look. They grunt at you as they walk past you, headed for their desk. They sit there the whole day ignoring you, ignoring everybody else. They don't talk, they don't smile, they don't greet, they do nothing. Well, this is what they are. They're punishing. And I just don't tolerate that sort of behavior in my team. My team knows that, and it's very damaging in teams. But essentially what it is that they're punishing those around them, and I think quite often it's a victim state, but that's another webinar. Understand that you are the person who has control over how you respond to life. If you get angry and shout and emotionally unintelligent, you react. If you are calm, your head over your heart, and you're in control, then you are responding. Those are the two differences, and what you're looking to do is to continue to respond at all times. Get a handle on your triggers, ladies. Like, what are those things that get you hot to anger? Those things that might get you going. 2 examples I'll give you. If I'm tired, if I've been traveling a lot for work, and I find I tend to be much, much less patient. I'm more irritable. Therefore, I'm less inclined to manage my irritability better or as well as I normally do because I'm tired. So it's a trigger. So when I am tired and I'm more easily agitated, I make a more determined effort to just not say anything. Another thing that I get very, very passionate about, passion is emotion, is animal cruelty. I find it very difficult, very, very difficult to remain calm. But at least I think the important thing here is that I've worked out that those are my hot points. And my question to you is, what are your hot points? What are the things that are going to get you going? Because you need to get, some sort of a boundary around those things. And practice the skills of emotional intelligence. Learn and practice. Get a mantra to help you stay calm. I have an issue, and this might be a good example for you. I absolutely hate flying. I'm very, very, very frightened of flying, and you wouldn't believe it. I'm flying all the time, and I have for many years. But it's not so much the flying; it's just the turbulence, and it's fear, right? So when I am up there in the air and I feel the turbulence coming on because I'm very sensitive to it, I have a mantra that basically I breathe in very, very heavily, like, and then I just go calm, 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 calm. And I'm breathing out very slowly all the time and then breathe in again. And then the words calm, calm slowly come out of my mouth. And that's my mantra to try and keep me calm. And I'm always looking at the air crew, the stewardesses, and to see what they're doing. So those 2 things keep me calm. And it sounds like a crazy thing, but the fear is a very, very real emotion, as all of you would know. By the way, fear and anger are the 2 most motivating, and love, I guess, of all of the emotions. So 8 ways to increase your emotional intelligence. I think I said 5, but I'm giving you 8. Increase your self-awareness. So, as I've just been saying, what are your hot triggers? What are the things that get you going? Are you more passive or are you more aggressive or more passive-aggressive? What are you and how could you be better at what you want to do? Know what your hot buttons are and why you get angry or upset about the things that you do. manage them. Don't let them hijack you. We call emotional hijacking is when somebody is quick to anger and then just reacts and bursts out. What's an example? When you're somebody who drinks, let's just say, and I'm not a drinker myself, but I look at people who drink heavily. So I was watching this program the other day on television. It was a young man who was clearly somewhat intoxicated, not absolutely legless, but he wasn't very good. And one of the cops said something to him about moving along. And obviously he was drunk, yes, okay, or he had had too many. But it was interesting to notice that his emotions, he didn't even need a prod, ladies, and he just absolutely went crazy. He went from 0 to 10 zillion in about 1 nanosecond. And that's what we call emotional hijacking. So if you take the drinking out of it, let's say, I used to work with a boss many years ago who was just the most unbelievable hothead. He would shout and scream and rant and rave at people and the whole building would shake. And then when he was over doing that and everybody was literally under their desks ducking for cover, he would just be calm and say, right, let's just continue. And we used to call him emotional hijack Jack because his name was Jack. And he was awful. And it's just a very, very unsettling thing for not only you, but for people around you to have to see somebody who just loses their stack because they can't control their emotions. I'm sure you've always seen that somewhere. Or when you feel angry, upset, say or do nothing for at least an hour. I always say this, don't do nothing. So many times I see people wanting to, they just type out this email and get really angry and send the email. Oh my God, the anger in emails is another story. It should be at the topic of another webinar. But do nothing. Do you think you would be in a position to just do nothing for 24 hours? Sleep on it. There's that age-old saying, sleep on it. Why? Because generally when you wake up the next morning, you might still be angry, you might still be hurt, you might still be upset, but you won't still feel that heightened emotion. And what I taught you at the beginning of this webinar is that the more in control your emotions, the better you make decisions. Therefore, because your emotions are more under control, you think of better ways to solve the problem than you would have if you just reacted at the time when the situation occurred. Learn to express yourself appropriately, communicate well. So, how to be assertive. I was running an Empowering Women to Thrive program recently in one of the regions, and it was really interesting. There were 15 women in the room, and at the start of the day, I said, tell me one thing that you'd like to take from this program. And do you know that every single solitary female in that room told me that they struggle with confidence and the ability to communicate well. So 20 women out of 20 women have the same issue, a lack of confidence, which is fear, and the inability to appropriately communicate. And there's a lot of you on the line, and I can tell you most of you would probably agree with what those 20 women said. Therefore, knowing how to be more emotional intelligent is very, very critical to being more confident, to staying calm and focus on the topic being discussed. And as I said, to make sure that your head always rules your heart in conflict and difficult situations. That is critical. Stop reacting and start responding, as I said a little bit earlier on. And I always say, if possible, maintain a positive attitude towards life. I always have to add another one in, and I think optimism is such an important thing obviously for all of us, but for women particularly. I think that I always say that when I'm speaking at conferences or I'm training, I think probably the most important thing in life is attitude. Obviously health and family, I'm not suggesting they're not, but if there's one thing that makes a difference to who we are, it's the attitude that we have. And I really think that for women, we need to do a lot more around having positive attitudes toward ourselves, towards things that happen to us, towards each other, and be able to support each other in everything that we do, because heaven knows women need women. So a little bit more, the Empowering Women program takes you from this really, and I wrote the program with women in mind, largely, as I said earlier in the webinar, because a lot of the time the women that I was dealing with were not able to articulate themselves or express themselves well, or they are in relationships that are toxic, or they're staying in workplace cultures that are absolutely awful. And I think, if we're able to know who we are, if we're able to express ourselves well, if we're able to use our emotions well, if we're able to stand our ground and be assertive and be confident, I think the world is our oyster. And I think that we can do marvelous things. And in this age of supposed moving towards gender equality, the time is now, from that to that. So the Be Unstoppable program, this is just a program for any of you who want to do an online program. This is how it is. These are the 9 stages. Number 1 is personal empowerment, taking control of your life. Your story, you really matter, because so many women don't think they do. Trust, love, and safety in relationships. Women in business. Managing stress as a woman in a challenging world. I think women are very stressed. Communicating assertively and confidently. You, the emotionally intelligent woman, which is sort of what we're doing tonight. Real resilience, bouncing forward as a woman. And goal setting, creating the dream life you really want. So I will get MJ to send you information about that. We also run a program, as I said earlier, called Empowering Women to Thrive at Work. Now, we're running that at the moment, interestingly, in a bucket of construction companies, law firms, both male-dominated industries, but also, interestingly, in councils. We're running it in not-for-profit organizations, and we're running it in Fiji. So this program is for women not in leadership positions necessarily. It's for women down the line. So the secretaries, the EAs, the data entry, the paralegals, women who often are forgotten down the line. This is who I really like to try and, aim this particular program at. Obviously, we do coaching. We run retreats, as I said. Please follow us on Facebook, Empowering Women to Thrive. Instagram at Empowering Women to Thrive. If you're interested, I'll get MJ, my marketing person, to have a chat with you about this. I'm happy to really talk with you about emotional intelligence. If you would like to learn more, have a quick chat. If you'd like a chat, it's all free. You don't pay for it. If you'd like a discussion, you're terribly welcome to have a chat with me, and you're welcome to invite me into your organization to have a look or to provide you with my recommendations at no cost. So I'm really happy to take any questions that you have, ladies. We've got about 5 minutes. If any of you have anything you'd like to know, any question that you would like to ask me, I'm really so happy to do that for you. So fire away. Okay, so here I have a question. The question is emotional intelligence something you can only learn when you're older? Well, I think it's an interesting question. I think, interestingly, I see some children who I think are really emotionally intelligent, Is it that they're just able to hold their mouths before they get angry and spit things out and then go back and resolve the problem? There's some children that do it quite well. There's certainly teenagers who do it well. So I think it's not necessarily only about getting older. I do think, though, that as women, when we tend to mature more and a bit more life experience under our belts, then we tend to maybe be more reflective about how we handle things. And, we've learned from past mistakes, so we tend to try and handle things better, all that sort of stuff. So I do think there's something to it, but I'm not sure that it's only when we get older. I think you can learn it as a younger person. And what I really like is to see young people who feel that their lives aren't working as well as they could be working, who really want to do something about it. I really love that because I feel that they've kind of got it. They kind of realize that they are the people who are in control of their own lives, and if they want to change things in their lives, they are the people, because nobody can change things for us, ladies, if we don't want to change it ourselves. So thank you, Sarah. A really good question. I enjoyed that one. Thank you. So are there any other questions, ladies? All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me this evening. I've really enjoyed chatting with you. I hope to be able to help you in the future. I will get MJ to send you the information, and I've loved being with you. So hopefully speak to you soon, and I will speak to you on the line next month with our next webinar, Not too sure what the topic is yet, but no doubt you will get the information as you usually do. So have a fantastic weekend, ladies, and take care. God bless. Bye.